Have you ever noticed that some thoughts seem to come from somewhere, not just out of nowhere, but from a specific direction within yourself? Maybe a sudden memory hits you from what feels like behind your right eye, or a quiet internal warning creeps in from what feels like just below your left ear. It sounds strange at first, but most people, when they stop to think about it, can relate. There's a sense, vague but consistent, that our inner world has direction, structure, even geography. Today I want to invite you to explore a new idea with me, one I call the clock of thought. At its core, it's a simple question: what if thoughts have directionality? What if inside our subjective experience, different types of mental activity, memories, warnings, daydreams, anxieties, tend to arise from specific positions relative to our internal self? Picture your consciousness as centered just behind your nose, the internal epicenter. And imagine a clock face around your head. A creative thought might come from 10 o'clock, a memory might rise at 2, a flash of guilt might creep in from 7. And what if this isn't just random? What if this pattern could be mapped? This isn't about brain scans or neurons firing, at least not yet. It's about how we experience our own mind. This is what I call mental topography. The landscape of thought as felt from within, not metaphorically but experientially, like a mind's eye VR headset, swiveling not in the physical world but through the inner one. A cone of attention that shifts to meet incoming thoughts, thoughts which seem to arrive from particular angles, with a consistency we rarely notice until we start paying attention. At first glance, this may sound like pseudoscience, or at best poetic introspection, but let's not dismiss it too quickly. Because when we look closer, this idea stands on the shoulders of many great philosophical and psychological traditions. Think of phenomenology, the field pioneered by Edmund Husserl and expanded by Merleau-Ponty. Phenomenology isn't concerned with the causes of consciousness. It's concerned with the structure of experience itself. And phenomenologists have long argued that time, space, and self all have felt dimensions. Merleau-Ponty, for instance, suggested that the body is not in space, but of space, and the same may be said of thought. The clock of thought can be seen as a phenomenological map, a way to describe how thoughts appear spatially to the thinker. Or look at Buddhist mindfulness and vipassana meditation, where practitioners train themselves to observe thoughts as arising and passing phenomena. Often they describe these as coming from above, behind, or below, even if metaphorically. The idea of observing thoughts without clinging to them relies on developing a kind of internal, spatial awareness. One we might now begin to chart. Even modern psychology dances around this idea. Cognitive science often speaks in terms of attentional spotlights, zoom lenses, or streams of consciousness. In internal family systems therapy, thoughts are treated as coming from different internal parts or voices, sub-personalities, each with their own point of origin and character. And then there's Jung, who described archetypes moving through a symbolic psychic landscape, a kind of mythic mental terrain. What's new in the clock of thought is not the idea that thought has character or type. It's the proposition that it may also have direction. Let's take it a step further. What if we could create a three-dimensional model, something like a spherical compass anchored to the internal self? Not just a 12-hour clock around your head, but a 360-degree map. Maybe a certain kind of doubt arises from 5 o'clock, slightly down and behind. Maybe your daydreams tend to float in from 11 o'clock, slightly up and left. Over time, patterns might emerge, not just within individuals, but between them. Could trauma reside in one quadrant, creativity in another? Could disorders of thought, like ADHD or anxiety, be partially understood as disorders of mental direction? It might sound abstract, but it opens the door to early scientific exploration. We could begin with self-reporting studies, individuals mapping their own mental directionalities. We could cross-reference these with EEG studies or default mode network imaging. If the spatial phenomenology of thought lines up with known neural patterns, say increased frontal activity correlating with forward experiences of focus, we're onto something profound. Even without hard neuroscience, this model could revolutionize therapeutic insight. Imagine someone with intrusive thoughts learning not just to notice them, but to locate them spatially within their own mental terrain. Over time, they might develop strategies to turn away, not just metaphorically, but in a newly embodied visualizable way. It might also help with attention and distraction mapping. If we can observe where the mind looks when it wanders, or where it feels our best thinking arises, we can better understand flow, focus, and interruption. We might design new kinds of neurofeedback, mindfulness tools, or even mental fitness apps that help people chart and optimize their internal landscapes. Most intriguingly, this model might allow us to map not just what we think, but how we experience our own thinking. It's a humble idea, but it has radical implications that we are not only thinkers, but navigators of an inner terrain. That thought is not a disembodied stream, but a spatially dynamic experience that the mind has landmarks. So what's the point? Why bother with speculative maps of an invisible world? Because if we can map the terrain, we can navigate it better. We can understand ourselves not just as minds having thoughts, but as conscious agents moving through a richly textured inner world. And maybe, just maybe, we'll discover that this inner geometry is not random but shared. That the clock of thought is not a personal illusion, but a collective pattern. That inside the fog of experience there are shapes waiting to be revealed. So I leave you with a challenge. The next time you notice a thought, pause, ask yourself, where did that just come from? Try to trace its path, not its cause, but its location in your mental space. Keep track, find patterns, explore your own mental topography. And who knows? You might just become the first cartographer of a new inner world.